What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here, and today we're gonna go into a more in-depth analysis of Flood Hazard Dragon, and also cover some useful tips going against disruptive cards, such as Grade 1 promos and G-guards. So I'm gonna start off with Flood Hazard. So the scenario is, your opponent got the first stride turn, and you G-guarded, hence the Gophilia face up. So when you stride with Flood Hazard, you're GB2 essentially right now. So, and I know some of you are thinking, what are you doing? Just let me talk for a bit, okay? Flood Hazard has a GB3 skill that helps mitigate the minus from its usual two cards that it has to discard. So, and it also gives the power to the front row Blue Wave Regards with additional plus 2k. So let's say with minimal setup, I'm gonna achieve the 4th battle, and let's say before I get into the battle phase I do Dagger Master. So kind of lost into soul. Now we get to draw. So then attack with Metla first, 11k. Vanguard, draw for Dagger Master. Any triggers apply here to Fuegos. Fuegos will attack, kind of less 1, make it an 11k. Restand. Then for the 4th attack, Fuegos again. And then now Flood Hazard will activate at the end of the battle to flip and kind of less, restand. Alright, so let's freeze right now. We are effectively at GB3 now because he Persona flipped and we were starting up at GB2 already. So now he'll get the additional drive check. So he'll draw first from Dagger Master and then you will draw a card. Not draw a card. You will drive check 1 card. And that helps mitigate the cost from a -2 to a -1. And in this case, I used Dagger Master to help mitigate that to become a break-even, essentially. But the awkwardness is that its GB3 skill activates at the 2nd attack, so that you're still minusing, you're not breaking even yet. And so what you should do is not go into this, you should go into Tetra-boil himself. So let's cover that. Tetra-boil is a GB2 stride. So if you get to G-guard and you stride, he is live. He already is a restander that breaks even. He does twin drive twice, so he gets 4 drive checks in total. He only discards 1 card, which is nice because most restanders in the game are inherent -1. So this is very good for Aqua Force. And so now once you start going into this kind of turn right off the bat, cards like Dagger Master in this example, and even let's say Brutal Trooper and Arsenal Flea, will give you actual +1s. So you're no longer trying to break even for any minusing that's happening. Unless you use Galeos, but then that's something else. So for this setup, I'm just going to attack, Vanguard. The skill goes off where you draw for Dagger Master, of course. Then the skill for Tetra, Persona Flip, and it goes Twin Drive. So you do Twin Drive, any triggers, put it on Fuegos. Fuegos skill on the 3rd wave, 11, restands. 4th attack again, restands the Vanguard by discarding 1 card. Let's say the card we just drew. And now you're ready to attack again. You'll draw 1 more. So we draw that. And you twin drive once more. So this is definitely a way better setup than doing the Flood Hazard in this scenario. And this is definitely important to keep a pair of Tetra-boils in this deck at least. So that way, if the scenario comes up, you can do this, and you can start plussing right away. So that way, your actual second stride becomes much easier to do, and you can probably do a bigger turn with more combo pieces at your disposal. So the few pros to sum it up: it breaks even already. You can plus with Dagger Master, Brutal Trooper, Arsenal Fleet, and so on. It gives you to save your Flood Hazard turns for later, so you can do 2 Flood Hazard turns still after this, because you use Tetra-boil instead to restand. Your 4th wave attack doesn't have to be a Blue Wave Regard in this instance. It could be anything. It could be a Tidal Assault, for example. And also, I guess the only con that really goes here is that it does Twin Drive, so it's not like Flood Hazard where he can do Triple Drive or Quad Check later on to stack on more triggers on cards like Fuegos to benefit even more. And that's really it. So now let's go into the 2nd scenario. Alright, for the 2nd scenario, you are GB3 when you stride Flood Hazard in this instance, so his GB3 skill is live from the very beginning. This makes a difference because it'll give your front row blue wave rearguards +2. In this situation, it doesn't really matter, but I'll mention along with the other units benefit. You'll get quad check on your first attack, and you'll get one more more. Words are hard. You get one more drive check on the second attack, and so also from the previous stride turns that I just demonstrated, it's assumed that we use Vallejo skill, so they are 11k base, and triggers can't give them power-ups. So for the first attack, Metla. The second attack, you do quad check. So you have 4 drive checks to potentially get triggers and stack them all on Fuevos. And you take advantage of that. Let's say you didn't get any, you're unlucky, it's 11k, restand. Get you to the 4th wave, Flood Hazard skill. Counterblast, discard 2, flip something of itself, and restand. And now, when you attack again, you'll get the additional drive check. So you'll do 5 drive checks in total, and that is actually pretty good. If you compare it to Tetra-boil, Tetra-boil gets 4 drive checks for 1 discard. And he does 5 with 2 discards. So you can see there's one more card being involved in both the cost and the gain from it. And it's better to see more drive checks if you break even anyway, because then you have more of a possibility to make use of the triggers on your rearguards, such as Fuevos and so on. And the other thing to mention is that if you, let's say, discarded 2 of these guys, you can activate the skill Soul Blast 1 for each. They come back to your hand, and so essentially the cost of discarding 2 just became Soul Blast 2 instead. Only use it if you think it's actually worth it. It depends on how much soul you have and if you need it for the next turn and so on, that kind of thing. So like I said, the pros of this Flood Hazard turn, you are breaking even finally in advantage. You don't have to rely on Dagger Master, Brutal Trooper, or Arsenal Fleet. If you see those guys still, then it's a +1 for every card you activate. You see 5 drive checks in total. The GB3 powers up blue wave units. Key units to mention that they get the actual benefit. Arsenal Fleet gets +4 when it attacks. So then it gets an additional 2k. So it's a total of 6 + 11, making that 17. So you get 17. Galileos becomes an 11k right off the back, so he doesn't need a boosted unit. So you can take advantage of that. Then Baragios, if you have a 7k booster behind him, this becomes, let's see, 7 + 7 + 2, that's 16. So it's a 60k column. So it hits numbers. So that's one of the things I wanted to mention for sure. And there's another thing I'd like to go over. So one thing I want to talk about is the timing of the skill of Flood Hazard Dragon when it activates, and also when Tetra-boil activates too. If you look closely at Tetra-boil, his skill activates on the first attack, where you have to Counterblast flip himself, and it gains the red tech skill, and it also gets drive -1. So you immediately go to twin drive on that first attack. And then the red tech skill will activate on the 4th battle or rearguard attack vanguard. And so you can pay the cost to discard at that point and stand. Flood Hazard activates at the end of the 4th battle, where our rearguard that had blue wave in the name attack vanguard. Let's see if I can get focus. There you go. This is key. The fact that this is the end of the battle, of the very last thing that really needs to happen, gives you more flexibility. Because of cards like this guy. So when this unit is placed on Guardian Circle from hand, choose one of your opponent's vanguards, and that unit cannot stand during that turn. That guy basically says, on a Tetra-boil turn, when you do the skill, or even prior, well, you want to do it on the attack of that, where you pay the cost. Once you pay the cost, they drop that guy, and you just get fucked. You waste a Counterblast, you waste a Persona Flip, you go down to twin drive, so you're already minusing yourself a drive check, so you -1 and advantage. And you lost any pressure on a restanding vanguard this turn as well, which sucks. So with cards like Flood Hazard, where it just activates at the end of the battle, this gives you the chance to see it if it's coming or not. So if they do end up dropping it at the very end at the 4th battle, you don't have to activate the skill. You can just rely on the GB3 and just go quad check, and that'll be it. So you don't minus yourself, you don't waste a counterblast, you don't persona flip. You +1 in fact because you're doing quad check. So it actually just saves you a card and gates you one in general, and you don't get fucked by it. Is what I'm kidding say. And if you don't see it drop, then you just pay the cost and do your regular shenanigans or restanding. And that's huge. Especially now with Zoo Booster coming out and Megacolony actually being a thing, this is probably something that you like to consider and be careful with this. So Flood Hazard is really good for this very particular reason too. Alright, for the next annoying thing from Megacolony is that they have a G-Guard called Grisefort. I think that's how you say it. But what it does is that when when the Vanguard attacks Vanguard, they can use the skill where you can Counter Blast, Force Rest or back row basically, and it gets shield power on top of that. So you have to be careful on your order of execution of attacks because you can get fucked. So let's say for the correct order in this situation, you want to attack with any back row attackers you got first. So Mela would be your first one to go right here. And then if you have any other cards to get you to the 4th wave, right? Then you're free to keep going. And then finally you get to the 4th wave, you'll restand and go again. So in this sequence, that G-Guard doesn't hurt you because you got the attack out of Metla at this point. Whereas if you went, let's say, just straight Vanguard first, if you're doing Vanguard, they can do that G-Guard and then just Force Rest this, and now you can't get to the 4th battle with these cards. You would have to rely on a restander in your front row to get to the 4th battle, if possible. Or if you had like a restander in the back row using Yorgos' skill to attack from the back row, and then they Force Rest you, and you're like, fuck, I don't have any front units to get to the actual 4th battle. So be very careful with that. The other thing to kind of avoid it is if you have your Vanguard attack their Rearguard, because it only activates Vanguard to Vanguard. But you generally don't want to waste your Vanguard attack on a Rearguard unless you really have to. And so if you can keep in mind your attack pattern, then all goes well. If you had the previous setup actually, which is probably more realistic, especially if they're using Ghidorah, where they're going to lock a whole column, then you're going to have to rely on this kind of combination to actually get to the 4th battle. And because she has resists, and not because she has resists, but because she attacks first and then your Vanguard will attack later, it doesn't harm you with their G-Guard. So you'll get to the 4th battle and restand. So that's big. You could do a very similar thing with the now Griffin in the Kagero matchup. Before I go that, there is the other way you can get around Ghidorah is you have front row and not have to worry about, let's say, rear guards. So you just rely on your front row so to get you there. But if you're facing Ghidorah, this is probably not going to happen. So you will have to rely on your back row, and it's something to be aware. So let's get into Hetero Round Dragon. Alright, so let's say you're facing Gear Chronicle, Chronojet specifically, and they have the Hetero Round available for them. So it's kind of annoying because they can choose any card to spend, but it does call something in stand. So it doesn't kind of negate your attacks. In fact, it keeps it the same, or it either increases it. If they spend a rested unit, you'll get another attack basically. The key thing with Flood Hazard though, the 4th battle has to be a blue wave to attack the Vanguard. So cards like Metla is actually highly appreciated in this scenario. So that way you can go first, I don't know, second, third, and then finally your 4th you can do it without worrying that she'll get spent or something, because she can't. She has resist. So you're guaranteed the blue wave name to hit, to attack on the 4th attack, and you'll get your restand. So that's something to acknowledge. You can fuck this up, so be careful. If you, for whatever reason, you do this kind of play, and you do this, if they do Hetero Round right now, and they spin this to something like, let's see, Malika. Let's see if I can find Malika. Whatever. Point is to you get a non-blue wave regard, and you're like, well, fuck, I can't restand. It's not so much of a downside because you still get quad check, but the problem is that you're facing gears and you want to be as aggressive as possible too against them, so they don't just take advantage of your passive aggressive turn and then just kill you the next turn. So definitely watch out. Another setup to get around it is using 2 front row restanders, pretty similar to what I've already mentioned before. Let's see. Let's say you had this. So you want restanders that don't collide with each other. So this can't be like 2 Fuevos or 2 Arsenal fleets, and etc. Tidal Assault is actually very flexible in this situation, so you can compensate for the other one. In this instance, you have to attack Vanguard first because Fuevos goes on 3rd wave. Arsenal Fleet goes on 2nd wave. If they spin it, let's say they spin this and you get another unit, you do 2 and then 3, 4, and you get to the 4th battle. So let's say they didn't spin it, and you proceed with your turn. Let's say you have another Counterblast, and immediately restands, and they spin this guy. If they spin Fuevos, something else that's not a blue wave, you can attack with this 3rd wave, and since he restood, he can attack for the 4th wave. If they didn't bounce Fuevos, and this restood, in fact, they spin him instead, then you end up with the same situation. So what I'm getting at is with 2 restanders, you can guarantee your 4th attack being a blue wave, and you'll get your restand, so you can get your pressure on this game. Keep in mind that you will use 3 Counterblasts in total, so you gotta have the resources to do this. So yeah. So now on to Kagero. There are 3 cards that you have to keep in mind when facing Overlord or Blade Master, but we're gonna go over the Overlord matchup. Over the Overlord matchup. Whatever. So they have access to Denial Griffin, they have access to Belloc, they have access to Defeat Flare, and they have access to Advanced Guard. But really, the only 3 cards you should be concerned is Belloc, Defeat Flare, and Denial Griffin. So with this setup, you don't have to worry about Belloc, because Belloc, even if it kills one of your rearguards, it already did the attack. Belloc is more of the case of Gallios, because you do the skill once, restand, attack again, and then at the end of that battle, they can drop Belloc, and if it didn't hit, then this guy dies. And if that's the only rearguard you have and you're on your Vanguard attack, there's nothing left on board to get you to the 4th battle. So that's really the only instance that Belloc does hurt. Your other restanders, such as like Fuevos, restands at the end of the battle, and since you are the current player, it's your turn, you get priority to resolve all your skills that happen simultaneously with your opponent. So you'll get to restand first, and you're no longer rested, so you're not affected by Belloc. Just wanted to mention that before I get into this combo. In this combo, the order of operations of your attacks does matter again. Defeat Flare is a thing. So the key to this is to attack with your back row first. That way, when your Vanguard attacks, if they Defeat Flare, these are gone. But you already did their attacks, so they already counted for the wave count. So, and if they didn't Defeat Flare, and you attack with the 4th wave, and they Denial Griffin, it counts the battle still. So you will get to restand and do your shenanigans still. So that matters. What else? There are different ways you can screw this up. You can attack Vanguard first, and they just Defeat Flare you, and boom, they're gone. Rip. You can only do 2 attacks at this point. And so you definitely want to be careful with that. There is a different setup where you can eliminate Defeat Flare from the equation. And again, it's having double restanders in the front row. And of course having 3 counterblast available to you. So the only thing you have to worry about is Denial Griffin. Your Vanguard will attack first in this case. This has to attack the 1st wave. I mean, it's not first. The 2nd wave to do its skill. It immediately restands. And then at this point, they can Denial Griffin. But you have Fuevos to get you to the 4th battle. If they don't, and they Denial Griffin on the Fuevos, right? It may die, but you still have this standing and can attack for the 4th wave and just restand. Not a problem. So definitely helpful. Another thing to note is that since you're GB3 with Flood Hazard in this scenario, this thing is hitting over the 16k mark. So they might actually pop this guy and then just worry about this guy being 11k mark, essentially. So That's the only difference when they like decide to pop one versus the other kind of thing. So yeah, and like I mentioned with Belloc, just be careful with cards like Gallios, where if they're just chilling and they're waiting to be restand by itself or by like a card like Alexandros, it'll get popped. So be careful. And so there is one more thing I'd like to mention, and I think it's something not really seen. So let's get into it. Alright, probably some of you are like, what? Tavas? Alright, so the new Tavas ruler has the stride skill that is generic. So any of your strides that you go onto will go off, and your rear guard will gain resist. And if it has the wave ability, it can attack from the back row. But the key thing, it has resist. You can play 1 to 2 copies just to have it available to you. And since you're already playing cards like Nikki, you can actually ditch Valeos or Arsenal Fleet or Anger Boil and search for the Tavas you have in deck still. So in certain matchups like Kagero, where they have they have a G guard like Denial Griffin, where your attacking rear guard can get popped just like that. It's also relevant against the Night Rose matchup where they have a Cannoneer. But I'm not going to cover fully the Night Rose matchup right now. I'm just going to focus on the Kagero one, basically, where you're just dealing with Denial Griffin. So once you're on GB3 too, you can give Fuevos the resist skill and your GB3, so you do quad check. The GB3 skill is generic. It works in any Aqua Force variant, so this is something to actually consider in different builds, different variants of Aqua Force, in case you decide that you need a quad check or something. And you can use this to pitch the cost of stride, of course. So now your Fuevos has resist, is what I'm getting at. So then, how do I get to the 4th battle? You need a card like, let's say Metla, right? That way, you can just do 11, and then you'll do your quad check and give all the triggers to your Fuevos. And now the Kagero player has to guard against your Vanguard and then worry about the Fuevos coming in, and you'll counterblast because you have the Blue Wave name. They both go off because your stride has Blue Wave in the name, and you also have Tavas too, so if you are playing Tavas rear guards, they can go off this turn too. But with the Valeos more focused build, I think that that's highly unlikely. You're using more of the Blue Wave core, so it'll restand, and you'll get another attack. So you get the benefit of quad check, and you don't have to worry about the Now Griffin at this point, is what I'm getting at. You do 4 attacks, quad check being included, and you're applying some pressure to Kagero that doesn't really like that. So, and in this instance, they're not really going to waste like a defeat flare right now, unless it's key to your turn. So you can do other units too. Let's do Gallios. So Gallios works if your stride has the Blue Wave name in its original card name, which actually you do. It's a Blue Wave stride, but you're on Thavas as your heart. But you can give Gallios his resist, and because you're GB3, he's 11k by himself. So when you're facing against Denial Griffin again, it's 11. You do the counterblast, you do the discard, of course, restand, another 11k poke, then attack Vanguard. This restands, do that. Quad check, give it all this power, and then of course one more attack. So you gave a rear guard that can attack 3 times resist. It's what I'm showing off right now. I wish you could take advantage of the triggers before, but you can only give the triggers on the last attack. So this is the one thing I don't like about this. But it's also one card that allows you to do 4 pokes, and you can take advantage of going quad check. So it mitigates the minus that Gallios has too, because you have to discard a card for him. There is another card that also goes well with this turn. In fact, it's probably one of the MVPs for this kind of play, or Lucianos if you play him, where you can just attack with the Vanguard first and give all the triggers from the quad check, and then immediately you do the scale, and he's the 17k, right? Yeah, 11 plus 4, 15 plus 2, yeah, 17k. And any triggers they got, it'll restand, take advantage of that, get a 3rd attack in. So with one card, you're able to get 3 attacks this turn. You go quad check, so you +1, you're applying some pressure, and then you unstride, and if you are on Thawas still, you can just keep striding Flood Hazard and keep going to quad checks, essentially. It is a grindy matchup with Overlord, after all, so this can come very handy. One thing to keep in mind though, you have to be careful with your PG plays, because if you can see with Yorgo, he specifies blue wave units in the name, so you can't use Yorgos on Davos because it's not a blue wave. So you definitely want to consider playing Plato's instead, and in that point, you get to take advantage of Plato's countercharging. So that could help out in different ways if you really think about it. And so, yeah, I hope you guys found this interesting or helpful. I will do more with Narukami, Link Joker, a little more about the Night Rose matchup because they have the Negro Lily play with Cannoneer. And I don't know if there's anything really else to talk about. I mean, Nubatama has the one that can grab grade 1s from back row, but most of the time it doesn't really matter, so you can easily play around it. And yeah, so like, comment down below, get a conversation going, share, and subscribe. See ya.